You don't know me, but I know you. You wouldn't know how to get to hell? Well, here it is. The entry to hell.
Gate is in Clay County, Indiana, and local nearby the incorporated community of Diamond, Indiana. It is often attributed to Brazil, Indiana, because it is very close northeast of it. It is the largest city near Hell's Gate itself. The north branch of Otter Creek runs just nearby Hell's Gate. It is within a heavily wooded area with hills and residential places here and there. The trains that travel the tracks are probably the loudest thing out there beyond the routine nocturnal thrill seekers. The roads leading directly to Hell's Gate and south of the tunnel converge at the bottom of a ravine, you could say. The gravel roads merge nearest the mouth of the tunnel but turn at a rough angle. This adds to the Hell's Gate's anxiety-inducing atmosphere. Being that once facing southward inside the tunnel, your perspective is limited, even more so with foliage all around. What many don't consider is that Hell's Gate is an odd three-ways crossroad, if you will. It could be that this unknowingly contributes to many stories of the supernatural.
For what it's worth, what it was told to me is that, and it was many years ago, that the first gate starts west at St. Mary's. It was never told to me, you know, where exactly it was, but it was always said that the first gate is at St. Mary's of the Woods. But I was always told that the tracks go from west to east, basically from St. Mary's all the way to Greencastle, Indiana. I don't know why that is. I've heard other people claim otherwise, that, you know, the gates are much closer to each other, or that even the gates, or some of them, don't exist anymore. So that would make sense, but I found otherwise. See, what it says online, or most places online, is that they're all located within the Wabash Valley, right? That's sort of true, but they're not quite that spread out. They're probably, and this is an ambitious statement, but I would say they're within 50 miles of each other or less. Well, actually, I know most of them are located less than that. But, you know, the Wabash Valley traditionally, or what a lot of people would consider the Wabash Valley, would be all the way from Fort Recovery, Ohio, all the way to, I'd say, Lafayette, to all the way maybe to Danville, Illinois, down to Terre Haute, Indiana, and then finally, you know, at the end of where it would meet the Ohio River. So obviously the gates aren't that widespread. I think what people are trying to say is that they're kind of located at the heart of the Wabash Valley. That's what they should say, instead of they're at the Wabash Valley. They're at the heart of the Wabash Valley. And what that means is basically they're kind of at the center of the state of Indiana, or kind of the center westward portion of Indiana. Maybe that's a better reference, but they're definitely there's definitely 7 gates, and I found them. far as correlations with the seven gates of hell or Hell's Gate itself, there's no denying that there's, biblical and folklore related connections. And what I mean by that is, there's things like the seven deadly sins or the seven princes of hell, or, you know, in Genesis, the earth and everything was created in 6 days and it was completed, or God rested on the seventh day. Or there's things even like, or there's, even things like all the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and all the planets, or at least that's what, it was initially like, thought as seven of those altogether. And what's really interesting is there's there's another location or another place with just almost an identical story to the Seven Gates of Hell in Indiana. And that's in a place, not too far away in Southern Illinois, or at least to my knowledge, it's Southern Illinois. And I think it's called Collinsville or something like that. And it was old mining town. And, of course, trains had to go through there. And then there's altogether, imperfectly, there's seven tunnels called the Seven Gates of Hell. And, you know, there's no denying that there's obviously other gates of hell, in, America itself. Like, let alone there's probably other ones I would imagine in other countries. My research hasn't gone that far, but, it's obviously led me to other Hell's Gates, or gates to hell, or, entries to hell. There's another one that's kind of interesting, and I think it's outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, and it's called Satan's Hollow. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of, Hell's Gate over in Indiana, given, the same kind of folklore and similar stories, and obviously, the satanic name connection there. But yeah, there's no denying that there's strong connections with at least the number seven, and, hell and gates and the underworld and things like that. And my theory is because traditionally, or at least in a sense, the number seven is a number of completion. And see, that's what you're doing when you when you visit the gates of hell, or all the seven gates, is, you're going to each one and you're completing on the very last one to, get the goods, or, you know meet the devil or go to hell, or, whatever may happen, um but there's no denying that the number seven is strongly related to this folklore, and probably all the folklore related to gates of hell and things like that. So that's certainly interesting. And what's really interesting, and this is the strongest correlation, and that correlation, or that very strong correlation, has to do with something historically that happened, and something that alleges to happen at Hell's Gates. And those dates connect in a very serious way.
There was once a massive bridge collapse over the Wabash River of the Big Four Railroad Bridge. The collapse began in the afternoon hours of February 23rd at approximately 2:35 p.m. The year was 1900. The bridge fell with the weight of a train and 40 or so freight cars plunging into the icy river below. Witnesses reported beforehand that the bridge itself swayed before the bridge fell into the cold Wabash. Just a single fireman died that February day as the train that came all the way from Mattoon to Terre Haute made her last stop into the deep waters below. It is my speculation that this incident in the year of 1900
it very well might have been the incident that led its story to the horrible train accident that supposedly happened over Hell's Gate. And this is how the Big Four incident probably became Hell's Gate's story.
Okay, so here are the facts of the layout of Hell's Gates. I'm kind of keeping this steady as I can, but give or take, the yellow is the tunnel, the roads are green, and the tracks are orange or whatever color you want that to be. But basically, it goes north, south, east, and west, maybe imperfectly. You can see all the directions it goes, what it goes towards, as far as like incorporated communities and cities nearby. But basically, you enter in from the south at the southern branch here, if you want to call it that, and you go north, and then you reverse it back, and you face south. Now, here is a lot of speculation on my part, and I'll acknowledge that. These are just theories, not facts. Please don't get them mixed up. Um, you know, Much the same here. Branch goes up, north, tracks, east, west. And I think it's really interesting that all these points, if you will, can make, if you see that, an imperfect star. And, it's kind of interesting that, if you know about the location, you enter in, from the north and then you face back south. Well, let's see kind of what that looks like if you're facing in that direction. It really resembles a pentagram. I know that's a stretch, but I got to say it does kind of resemble that in a way. Another thing that's really interesting, and I think it kind of resembles, is it kind of resembles a human shape, or a stick man, stick figure. Though, could it be in some people's mind a human effigy, or kind of resemble that? And what's really interesting is it faces east. The significance of that, I don't know. I just know that when you travel to all seven gates, you head eastward. And I think that's pretty interesting. But take what you will, it kind of resembles a star. And it definitely makes a three ways crossroad. So, far as I can gather, or I have gathered, this will be the timeline for Hell's Gate, or that particular tunnel, whatever you want to consider it. You know, Tunnel for the trains to pass over. But best to my knowledge, what I've gathered is, and we'll start it here, is it's currently owned by CSX, and it was bought in 1999. And before then, it was owned by Conrail, and that was purchased in the 70s and more specifically in 1976. Before then, Penn Central or Pennsylvania Central um, owned it in 1968. And before then, it was very likely that, Pennsylvania Railroad owned it at least in, the 1910s. And then before then, it was probably owned by Indianapolis Union Railroad in 1906, and they might have built it, but no one knows. It's kind of a mystery. But yeah, that's the best timeline I have made for Hell's Gate. You know, if you have a better timeline, and you're kind of more of an academic, a historian, not someone's uncle or dad or stepdad or something that, knows all about it, someone a little bit more credentialed than that, no offense. If you know a better timeline, I'd love to know it, but this is the best one I think there is right now. So here's a rough representation of how the seven gates are kind of all connected and how they're sort of set up. It's really rough. It's it's not complex by any means or stretch of the imagination, but you can see here it's sort of like a check mark, sort of a hook shape. Obviously, it shows that basically the what we'll call the line or the seven gates go from a westward to eastward direction, and obviously they start at Bloomtown, then West T, and then Cold Bluff, then Hell's Gate, Carbon, then Snake Creek, and Greencastle. And what's really interesting about this direction in general is the tracks, or we'll call it the line. It moves from west to east through a city, and then the countryside, and then another city. And they obviously they actually go much further, all the way to Indianapolis. So I mean, all in all, you could really find all kinds of gates, I guess, if you really tried to find them. I found more than just seven myself, but I felt that these were the best gates, I guess you could say. But yeah, basically it goes in a hook shape, goes from west to east. Hear ye, hear ye. I thought this would be kind of interesting. It shows you all the places I've been in Indiana and sort of the Midwest. Anyway, it doesn't have relevancy to what I want to actually talk about here. What I want to say is that, far as the tracks for Hell's Gate, or the gates, the seven gates of hell, they all go in a direction of, west to east. And what I mean by that is they are a single, pair of tracks. They might turn into one track, in respect of where they are geographically. But, they kind of start, in Terre Haute, and they go to Greencastle, if you can see that there. And they go even further. They go all the way to Avon, for sure, and Indianapolis. And that's significant in that, there's probably, more than one gate. And, they can't... any single gate can be attributed to this. That's sort of my running theory of why there's no specific gates per se, but they definitely go from Indianapolis all the way to Terre Haute, and you could label any given tunnel or train trestle, I guess you could say, as or bridge as the gate to hell. And that's an important thing to note, in that I'm sure people will disagree with me on the gates, but I'm pretty confident with the gates that I found. So take it or leave it, but they definitely go from Terre Haute all the way to at least Greencastle, if not Indianapolis.
See, not only did I come to the conclusion that the number 7 is a number of completion, it is also a representation of the duration of time, the experience of one living their life, if you will. From Monday to Sunday, that are 7 days a week. That is the experience of the human living their life. And the importance of the direction of eastward or east has to do with preparing oneself for death, or facing the underworld, as you will. Facing east means symbolically that you are preparing yourself to enter the next life or the underworld. It's a direction of preparation, and it is an acceptance of one's mortality. You see, things to be considered when you make the journey from each gate, all the way from west to east. What you're doing is you're making your way to the, essentially, you're making your way towards the east, and you're making your way towards Greencastle. What's interesting about that is the color green is often, or almost always associated with, you know, vegetation and, forest, wild life, you know, rejuvenation mostly. And that's sort of what you're doing, is that rejuvenation in this sense is a form of death. It's like that story of the Green Knight that, offers to, or makes the condition that, oh, if you sever my head from my body, you know, I'll come back in 1 year to, sort of, make even the deal. And that's sort of a story of death, and living in death is you live your life and you know that you are mortal and that you eventually have to die. And that's the whole idea. That's the whole concept of being reborn and then continuing on into the next life, or the underworld, the next stage. And the very final point, the very final form of the human, vessel is to embrace the, you know, the natural side of the world, because that's what takes you into the next life, the next stage, the the underworld, the underbelly, the under your feet. And the whole idea that your next stage is the natural world taking you, your body, into the cosmos, or into the the earth itself. No matter the depiction, if you believe the next life is clouds, or places of paradise and like floating, you know, castles or whatever, that's what's most interesting. That the word Green Castle is sort of a merger of those two kind of concepts, the natural, and then sort of a place of perfection. though all of this is very coincidental, it's very interesting that it kind of falls together so completely. Um, I know it's kind of deep and it's a little out there, but I think there's definitely something to that. And this whole idea of East and the number seven and completion, I don't think it's purely just, you know, it isn't purely something that could just be dismissed.
So here we are. Let's adjust this a little bit. This is the legendary Hell's Gate. Basically, I'm going to do the whole, we'll call it the ritual or the conjuring part of Hell's Gate. And basically, I'm going to drive through, drive back around, honk my horn 3 times and flick my lights 3 times and wait in the dark for a little while for something to happen. And that's all I'm going to do. So hopefully, my biggest fear is getting stuck in here, not seeing demons. But obviously people have been in here since I've been in here last. Whereas it kind of looks like that. So, yeah, basically, just pulling up here. Kind of looking all around. So my sensor there kind of got close to the brush behind me. I'm all alone, by the way. I kind of thought that would be better, for certain reasons. But yeah, just stating facts here. I'm all alone, and this is obviously flooded in here. So let's just hope I don't get fucking stuck. All right, just this a little bit. You can hear my engine going. All right. So, guess you do it this way. I don't know. Or maybe it's more like and yeah, guys, I'm gonna kill my engine. Wish me luck. And we are in the dark. To my knowledge, the legend doesn't say that you can't have a flashlight, so I don't know. Here's my flashlight, and I'll actually shine it outside. That's proper spooky, huh? You can kind of see. You can see the wall. I mean, I can see stuff, but the camera's not picking it up. My voice is like definitely echoing in here. There's a lot of condensation on the walls. Yeah, I'm gonna give it about 3 minutes. Say 10, but I'm not gonna get myself stuck in a tunnel, especially at midnight, where it's basically midnight right now. So it's the windshield. Personally, I'm hearing a lot of acoustic sounds, and obviously my voice, but I can't tell if it's like rainwater. I bet it is rainwater, but I think it's probably just it could be like far off distant sounds, and it just somehow carries through here. Not too sure why or how, but um, yeah. So far, I see nothing. And by the way, I'm doing this Friday the 13th, or that night. So this would be a good night, if any, for something to happen. Yeah, that's just my light again. Yeah, I'm just shining it outside the car. Yeah. Yeah, we'll give this another minute. I'll sit in silence though. Not gonna lie, I thought I heard something, but I don't know. My imagination. Yeah, just hearing a lot of rain. Give it about 30 more seconds. Shine my light and see if we can see anything. No, I don't even see anything playing tricks on my eyes. Can't really see anything in here besides the tunnel. We're coming up on that mark. Yeah, I think we're gonna turn on the light. I thought I saw. That was weird. I thought I saw a light. Yeah, that was really weird. I'm not even joking. I thought I saw a light, like, kind of above in the tunnel, like outside it, or maybe, I don't know. That could have just, I don't know. That could have been my eyes playing tricks on me. I don't know. But, yeah. I'm still here. All alone. Friday the 13th. And nothing. Busted? Well, I don't know if this is busted or not. I'd like to come out here maybe once, at least once on Halloween, and, just see what would happen. But, yeah. Yeah, that's about it. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to stay any longer. I'll go ahead and head out here. Hopefully I'm not stuck. So far, so good. Yeah, Hell's Gate. Not so hellish. Maybe the road's a little hellish. The terrain, and it's definitely flooded in there, or it's trying to flood. So I don't know. I'm not convinced of the legend, but some people say that you're supposed to do it 7 times with the lights, and I don't know, all kinds of variations, and of course I didn't go through all the gates, but I'm not doing that. Just not gonna do that unless I got a lot of views on this video, I guess. But nah, I don't really believe in the legend. It's really cool though. It's like a lot of other legends. It's definitely a famous one here in Indiana. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a believer, so. See, these tunnels, they're like portals to our history or our past. And it's as if these ghosts can't rest at these places. They keep pulling us in. These ghosts of these places, they keep pulling us in because they remind us that even with all of our highways and our back roads and our streets and our cities, they're still waiting there for us to remind us that there's still death and there's still punishment. And even if we make fun and we disbelieve their tales, the ghosts and the devils, in the end, they get the last laugh. also, if you like what you watched and you want to give me some support, just like and subscribe this video. And down in the comments, let me know if you have any stories about, Hell's Gate or the gates, or any Hell's Gate near you, or really any story about like the devil or folklore like that, or just a good ghost story. Just leave them down in the comments, and thanks very much. Keep in mind that if you need to go to hell, that it has a clearance height.